Good morning and welcome to St. Mark's Live. I'm Pastor Edna Thomas, sitting here in sunny Mystic, Connecticut. Beautiful day outside, and I'm looking forward to getting out there, maybe working on some bike riding with my kids later this afternoon in our parking lot. My wife Leah and I have been blocking the parking lot off with our cars in order to have a safe space for bike riding. And it's been a lot of fun. I remember learning how to ride a bike when I was about 4 years old. It's one of my first memories, actually. And the person that I'm going to talk to today might remember that as well. It is almost Mother's Day. It is the Wednesday before Mother's Day. And we'll at some point mention why it's ironic that I'm talking to my mother about Mother's Day as a Mother's Day celebration here in a couple of minutes. But without further ado, I'm so happy to welcome to St. Mark's Live, my mother, Edna Thomas. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Adam, and anybody else who's watching from St. Mark's with my handsome son. Can't wait till he sees what's ironic about Mother's Day. So,
I'll just
what
do
is
it right.
ironic
I'll just do it
about
right now. Well, we didn't really celebrate Mother's Day growing up. It
No,
wasn't something that you never made a big deal about it, and so we never made a big deal about it. And then when I got married, Leah always wondered why I never did anything for Mother's Day. And and
sorry,
now
Leah.
and now that she has been a mother for almost 6 years, we do celebrate Mother's Day, of course, and she is definitely the driving force behind presents for you for Mother's Day.
Oh,
Um,
oh, yay, I'm going to get presents. Terrific.
yes, oh yes, it's something that smells very nice.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
I think yeah. So
Well, I always thought of Mother's Day as a Hallmark holiday. And then I moved to West Virginia and found out the origins of Mother's Day. By that point, it was too late. You were already grown and out of the house. So
I don't know that. What are the origins of Mother's Day?
I don't remember, except it started in West Virginia.
Huh,
And I
interesting.
don't quite remember, but you could probably look it up.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I will do that. Yeah, so I grew up without really doing Mother's Day, really Father's Day either. Neither of them were celebrated much in my house. And so now on Father's Day, the only thing I've ever asked is for Leah to change the pictures on my desk with new pictures of the kids. So I get a new picture of the kids once a year, and the old ones go into an album in my desk drawer. That's really all I ever want for Father's Day. But we'll see what's going to happen. I know we're making a cheesecake this Sunday, which means I get to celebrate Mother's Day too. Uh,
Are you making the cheesecake?
we both
Or
have
the,
made them. Leah and I both have made cheesecakes. Hers are a little bit more successful than mine. See, the thing about a cheesecake is as long as you put the ingredients all together, it still
Mhm.
tastes good, even if it doesn't look good. Because it's hard to mess up the ingredients of cream cheese and sugar, which is basically what
Ooh,
a cheesecake is.
with,
Um,
with fresh strawberries on top.
you like I like mine unadulterated, just straight. But I have had it with strawberries, and it is that is good too. But I prefer it just straight. So one of us will make a cheesecake this weekend. I probably will, just because it's Mother's Day. But she might take the reins in order to make sure that our last cheesecake was the very first one we'd ever made that didn't split. The big problem with cheesecakes is that the tops will split. Again, it tastes
Hmm.
fine. But our last one didn't do it. It was the first one we've ever made that didn't split, and it was kind of amazing. Um,
You didn't know why.
why it worked?
Yeah.
It all it's a I think it's kind of a shot in the dark. Honestly, some cakes work better than others. It has how you mix it. I don't really know. It's not
Hmm.
why not why I asked you to come on today. We could talk about
No,
cheesecake some
that's
more, but neither of us is an
right.
expert, so let's talk about other stuff. Yeah, so I was mentioning bike riding. I was 4 years old. We were living in Wisconsin when I learned how to ride a bike.
Hmm.
I just have a memory of basically just getting on a two-wheel bike and going. I don't know how much there was before of me falling and getting up and all that stuff.
I don't think there was any because you were always a natural athlete.
Hmm.
And we were living in the Peaks, which was that very small old seminary housing that was a teeny tiny apartment.
Yep.
So anytime we could be outside, we were. And we had the bike. I think you may have used training wheels once on it, and then it was obvious you didn't need the training wheels. So they came off. Um, I don't remember if I was holding you at the back or Dad was holding you, and we just let go without you knowing it. And there you were. You rode all the way around the Shoda house, and
I
we lived there, and so you could ride to library and to the lake and all kinds
Those
of
are
things.
simpler times when a 5-year-old could ride around town by himself. Um,
Well,
I
we
guess it
lived
was
on
during
campus.
it was in the campus of the seminary, but I do have a very vivid memory from around that period when I did wipe out hardcore on my bike because my shoelaces got caught in the chain and I flipped the bike.
Ooh.
I just remember it's one of my earliest memories of just being scraped up all over. I didn't get seriously injured, but I was very much scraped up, knees, elbows, forehead. Maybe you suppressed this one.
I did suppress that one because those were the days we didn't have bike
No, I
helmets for
didn't do bike
children.
helmets. Yeah. So let's talk about your favorite thing, which is books.
My grandchildren?
No, your books are your
Books. Oh,
favorite.
my
Okay,
books. Okay.
are these your two favorite things? Are your grandchildren and your books? But let's stick with books for now. So I had a request by one of our members for some book recommendations from you, as you have been a source of good recommendations for our book group. But outside of a book group type of book, what have you been reading that you would recommend for folks, especially folks that are, at home, sequestered during this pandemic?
Well, I just finished one that I can't say I loved, but it was a hard one. I was debating whether I was going to tell you about this one or not. It's called American Dirt, and it's by, I've got it right here, Janine Cummins. And it was an Oprah pick, and it was listed very highly on different websites. And so I actually bought it, which I'm not buying many books, but I can't go to the library now. And I figured this is one I could pass on. It's a story about immigrants from South America and their journey to the United States. And it's a mother and young boy. I think it's like a 9-year old boy. It's difficult to read because it's rather graphic, um, but I suspect it is what happens, what that trip is like. The writing is fabulous. It's excellently written. Um, and the cover says it's a great grapes of wrath for our times, and I could see that because it really does do some horrific um, discussions about their travels. So it's worth reading if somebody is interested in some heavy reading about the immigration issue. If you want light reading, I'd stay away from it. But it's worth it. So that was one I finished recently.
So that was called American Dirt. Uh oh.
Do you want me to hold it up? Let me see if I can
Oh,
hold it up.
Bill got in here.
Is it backwards?
No, you're good.
Okay, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
And so after that, I went to my old standbys of mysteries because I needed
Mm-hmm.
some murders that weren't real. So that's what I've been reading recently.
Gotcha. So
Plus my education for ministry books, which we finished last week. So
yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, we can talk about that in a second.
yeah,
So you like to read? What type of mysteries do you read?
it depends on my mood. I love Louise Penny, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And what
Leah
tell us a little bit more about Louise Penny, because that might be a name some folks aren't familiar with.
yeah, I was Leah and her mother Pam and I actually went to see Louise Penny in was it in Middletown,
I
Connecticut,
can't remember. Yeah.
a couple of years ago, or maybe it was a year ago. And I had made T-shirts that said, "I love Armand Gamache." Armand Gamache is the protagonist of the Louise Penny books. He is a um, district, I forget what they call it, but he's a supervising detective in the Montreal Charette Police. And it takes place, it's a whole series. I've lost count of how many there are. I was going to look that up and didn't have time to. Um, but it's a whole series of books about Amman Gamache, and most of it takes place in this little idyllic town just over the border from, I don't remember if it's New York or New Hampshire, but just over the United States Canadian border, called Three Pines, and it's just this small town, but there are so many murders in this town. But it's not just a murder mystery because Louise Penny develops her characters, and they're multifaceted. They're not all good guys, and sometimes the black and white is not, it's very gray in who's good and who's not good. And it's the type of series where you become attached to the characters, and you just want to cozy up in Three Pines at their inn by the fireplace and just talk to these people as if they were real. Um, so the three of us went to the launching of not her last book, but the one before that. And she's a fabulous presenter. She didn't start writing until she was in her 40s, and she is just terrific. Um, so her first book, if anyone's interested in her series, and they're not just about, and let me go back, they're not just about the murder and the criminal, finding the perpetrators. Their character development, their psychological, why the characters do this, why they do that, what motivates them, their relationships, their struggles. Just it's everything is there in a Louise Penny book. And her first one is called Still Life. If you decide to read these books about Amman Gamache and his cohorts, you really need to start at the beginning and do it in order because the story develops and the characters develop as they go along. And she has a huge fan base. She also has a website where you can go on. If you just Google Louise Penny, you'll find her website, and there are synopses of all of her books. So she's my absolute favorite, and her next book is coming out in September.
Yeah, she writes basically one a year, right?
She does. She had 1 year where she was almost 18 months, but it was right after her husband died. Mm-hmm. So there were issues for that.
So you said the first one is called Still Life.
Still Life, yes.
Still Life, and this is one of the only areas of life where I diverge from my family in a significant way. Where mm-hmm. my mother, my father, and my sister, and my wife, and her sister, and her mother all absolutely adore Louise Penny and her mystery novels. I read the first two, and they're just not for me. And that's okay. It's just, it's, people like what they like. And that particular, I realized that I'm just not a huge fan of mysteries because these are the best, and I didn't love them. So, if you don't like mysteries, then they might not be for you. But if you like mysteries just a little bit, and you just like really good characters, then then they'd be mm-hmm. very much up your alley. And there's a bunch of them now. What is it, 10?
I was trying to remember how many there are. I'd say maybe 12.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few.
All right, so you've got Louise Penny. Any other authors that you would suggest?
I was looking at what I have read since January because I keep a book journal, so I can go back and see what I read.
You've been keeping this book journal my entire life.
Well, no, because I went to my first one to see what the date was, and it was September 1990.
Okay, so most of my life.
So you were already 7 years old.
7. Okay.
So the one I have now is volume 14.
Volume 14 of your book journal. Yeah, so you've written a little paragraph about pretty much every book you've read since 1990.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. I still think we should publish those. Just, I think that would be really interesting.
Well, your sister said the only thing she wants in my will is my book journals. So with historic fiction, one of the ones I read recently is called The Only Woman in the Room. And it's by Marie Benedict. And interestingly enough, something I had no clue about, it's about Hedy Lamarr, the actress in, what was it, 30s? It was 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And Hedy Lamarr, not only was she a, quote, bombshell in that era of Hollywood movies, but she was an inventor. and she invented with a partner um, the precursor to radar. And she had it patented, and she had presented it to the government during World War II, and they just kind of ignored it. And then, with some more work on it, they actually used her blueprints during the Korean War. And that's when it became something that they used regularly in military use. But her life started out in Austria, I believe. She was an actress in Austria, and she married um, an ammunitions merchant. And so she was privy to, he kept her pretty much hidden, but she was pretty privy to a lot of the secret things going on because Goebbels and some of the others would come and talk with her husband, and she would listen. And so she knew kind of what was going on. And then she, as the story goes on, she escapes and she makes her way to the United States, and that's where she becomes an actress. But it's fascinating seeing this person who I only knew of from Blazing Saddles. You know, it's not Hetty, it's Hedley Lamar. Um, that the life she led and the things that she did, she was a brilliant woman.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
that was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I do like historical fiction too. And I went through a whole phase of World War II resistance that kind of just overwhelmed me.
hmm Yeah. So you know when, because you read so many books that you know when you need to shift back into another lane in order to recharge certain attention batteries.
Yes, and that's when I go to my cozy mysteries.
And
So,
how do you define a cozy mystery?
oh, they're silly. They are character driven, and they're more driven by where they are. There's a series by Carola Dunn, and the protagonist is Daisy Dalrymple, and it's set in England in the 1920s.
Okay.
And
So the
she is the
setting is really important for these.
setting is important, and people. There's another one that's set on the Outer Banks that's called the Lighthouse Mysteries, and it's a everything I love, a library in a lighthouse.
Oh
So
wow,
you
there you
can't
go.
go wrong.
Yeah.
Another one who is by about a bookbinder in San Francisco. Another one about a tea shop in Charleston, and
And
they're
and these are
just,
just places where murders happen.
of course, yeah. And there are always these little towns of this one person who's always, falling over or in
Right.
the murder
And
industry.
this is you would, but you wouldn't put Louise Penny in the
Oh no,
cozy
Louise Penny
mystery.
is
No.
no, she is more literary.
There's more philosophy in the Louise Penny
Hmm.
books, and it's more
And there
literary
are two
merit.
more besides Louise Penny,
Hmm
Charles Todd, who writes as Charles Todd, but it's actually a mother and son team that write together.
Hmm.
And they have two series, and they're historic. One is um, Inspector Ian Rutledge, and it's post World War One, and he has some PTSD, but he's also a Scotland Yard detective. And those are pretty meaty. And then he has another. They have another series whose protagonist is Bess Crawford, and she is a World War One nurse. And of course, they all deal with murders. And one other one that I'll tell you, and then I'll stop with the mysteries, Adam, is Charles Finch, who writes the Charles Lennox series. And Charles Lennox oh, goes from the 1850s to maybe the late 1890s, early 1900s.
hmm
So, and he is this from a privileged British family. His father was in Parliament, his older brother's in Parliament. He doesn't need to work. And it's just the beginning of private detection, and he's a private detective. So,
Hmm.
so Charles Todd, Louise Penny, and Charles Finch are more the literary mysteries, and then the cozies are just they need to escape into someplace comfortable and knowing that these probabilities are never going to happen. You can't have six murders in a lighthouse library
Right.
on the
Right.
Outer Banks.
There's a little bit of stretching the realms of credulity that you just have to
Quite a
put
bit.
your suspend the disbelief in
Mm-hmm.
that way. Yeah. Um, all right. So hopefully that was enough recommendations the book that I'm reading right now, I've been reading for a couple of months because it's almost 800 pages or a little over 800 pages. It's called These Truths, and it's a one-volume history of the United States by the author
Ooh.
Jill Lepore, Lepore. And it is very thick, but very well written. And because it's a one-volume history, it doesn't get too in-depth about any one thing, but it does start from before Europeans coming to the Americas. And right now I'm getting close to the end, and I'm in the 1970s, early 80s. But it's very much a political and social history,
Mm-hmm.
and so learning a lot of really much digging into um, a lot of things about politics and how things happened in ways that our modern political discourse don't seem that they would allow to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like conservative luminaries like Ronald Reagan or Betty Ford having support for at least at one point having support for positions that in our current political climate would not be supported by a conservative majority. And it's really interesting how, and that's all through our history. So that's just one example that I just read. That's why it's in my mind. But it really does a great job of telling the story of the United States and not just the story that you've always heard. It's a really good book and very well written. So Jill Lepore, These Truths. I want to finish it though because I want to read something else, and I've been reading it for a long time.
Jill Lepore, the NPR reporter.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I thought this author was a professor, so I'm not. I might be a different person. So let's shift gears here for our last few minutes and tell me a little bit more about another thing that you're very much involved in, which is education for ministry.
Yes, and that's where I do a lot of reading too, but it's a whole different type of reading. For those of you who aren't aware, Education for Ministry, it started, it's an initiative out of the School of Theology at the University of the South at Swanee, which is near and dear to my heart and to Adam's heart. And it's over 40 years old. I think we had our 40th anniversary maybe 4 years ago. I can't quite remember. It's an international program, and it is designed specifically for lay people, even though people get confused with education for ministry means you're going to be ordained, and it's not that at all. It's a good primer for people going into seminary or into the profession, to the diaconate. And it is set, there's a 4-year cycle to it. Participants sign up for 1 year at a time. The first year we study the Hebrew Scriptures, Old Testament. Second year is New Testament. Third year is church history. And fourth year is theology. I have been mentoring, I did 4 years of EFM. And honestly, I had to wait till Adam went off to college because it was way too much to do while I had children in the house and was going to soccer games and dance recitals and driving and everything.
So it's a really serious lay schooling type of thing, right? I mean,
yes,
yeah,
very serious. You need to at least put in at least 2.5 hours a week studying, depending on the year you're in. Of course, first year, there's a lot more to read than second year. And third year, we read a very thick book that Adam knows about.
Christianity, the first 3,000 years.
First 3,000 years, yes. Christianity, the first 3,000 years, which I finished last week, and it was like, yes, finished it.
That book is in any case, really thick.
So oh yeah. So so I've been mentoring for 13 or 14 years now. I lose track. And it is, as I said, lay led. Sometimes the priest in a parish will be a mentor. I've always worked with co-mentors who are lay people as well. And we meet for 2.5 hours once a week for 36 weeks, kind of goes with the school year. And the way I've always mentored is that it's like a one room schoolhouse. So all 4 years meet together. And then the other very important part of it, besides the education part, is theological reflection and learning how to see things in your everyday life and look at it through a theological lens. Um, it is a fabulous program. I recommend it to anybody who wants to delve a little bit deeper into their history and into the faith of the church, into your own faith, into the way the church works and how the church came to be, which is very interesting and not always nice. So I love it.
Which
And
which is the which of the 4 years is your favorite?
as much as it is really hard to keep up with all the reading, I love teaching or mentoring first year. And the reason being is that people will read in the first and second year, you read both the Bible and textbooks that go along with it. And I just love the dawning of the light bulbs that go off in first year students of, gee, something like, I never realized there were two creation stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I never realized that the creation stories and other stories in the Old Testament are similar to other creation stories around the world and Greek philosophy, Greek myths, Roman myths,
Mm-hmm.
Egyptian stories, and how they all kind of have the same basis
Mm-hmm.
and were um, written a long time after. It wasn't like they walked in the garden and somebody wrote down their story.
Right. Right.
It's all oral tradition. And so the dawning of the light, the epiphanies that come from people reading, especially the first 5 books, the Torah for the first time and really delving into it, I just get a big charge out of.
Yeah.
Because
Very
it's
cool.
like this slap on the head. Why didn't I ever know that? I'm 60 years old and I never knew this.
I have a similar experience when I do Bible studies and teach or I'm just teaching like an overview of the Bible for people to. I think one of the biggest aha moments people get that haven't really thought too much about the Bible is the fact that it isn't a book.
Mm-hmm.
That it is a collection of so many. I mean, we it's not even a collection of books. It's a collection of all different types of literature in which were collected specifically because humans were trying to figure out how best to communicate the experiences of certain individuals with God and how those experiences then led communities to form. And so when we take it away from it just being this book that you have this idea of somebody on a street corner shaking it at you and take it from there and say, no, but let's actually open it up. And when we realize that it's not one book, but a collection of different voices, now we can start putting those voices in conversation with each other, which opens up an entirely new understanding of how to find meaning within the text of the Bible. And it also takes away the need for everything to be harmonious, for everything in the Bible to agree with everything else in the Bible, which it just doesn't do.
It does not. and also learning about the audience it was written to, especially in the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Who the Gospels were written for, where they were coming from, where the Synoptic Gospels came from, where John came from.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the letters from Paul, the people he was writing to. He wasn't writing specifically to people in 2020.
Yep.
He was writing to a specific community in wherever, Ephesus or Colossae or wherever.
We're
So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm done.
Right now in our Thursday morning Bible study here at church, we're just finishing up the authenticated letters of Paul, or those ones that we're sure that he wrote. We've got a few more chapters of Romans to read, and it's been really fun this year going through those letters and picking up the themes that Paul uses over and over again, and then also seeing how certain communities he speaks to certain communities slightly differently than he does to others. And also his own evolution. If we try to put them in a date order, which we don't know for sure, but we have some good ideas about the date orders of his letters. You put them in that order, and you can see an evolution of his theology. And that, seeing that in Paul's letters helps me as a preacher understand, if I go back and look at my sermons from a decade ago, what does my theology look like back then versus now? Oftentimes I'll take old sermons and I'll update them for the present, and that always includes me rewriting well over half of what I wrote the first time. And so really it ends up being me saying, I liked that idea, I want to say that again, but I'm different, the world is different, the text is the same, but how are we going to say it in a new way now? And I think Paul does the same thing as he develops his own theology of what's happening as this new understanding of the faith is emerging. So yeah, I could see why that would be your favorite, or one of your favorite ways of doing it.
And that's what happens too in education for ministry, because people come in with one theology, if you will. They don't even understand it's a theology for the most part. It's just what they believe. And after the 4 years, especially with the interchange, because you're discussing with other people and it's all in the group, it's all confidential, it's not shared outside of that group. And so you're getting other opinions and other thoughts about what you've read and what you've believed. And so if you look at your journals from year 1 to the end of year 4, and you can actually see that growth. And that's the other exciting part to me, is watching people grow through their 4 years of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's really been a calling on your heart to be a mentor for this. And what does a mentor mean in this particular context?
Mentors are not teachers. We are there to facilitate, basically, to help guide the conversations, to keep conversations on track, which is very hard to do, while also allowing for the Holy Spirit to come in and go, we want you to go this way. Mm-hmm. And we talk about fishing, people will go, and we have to go, let's go back to what so-and-so said, mm-hmm. and, stay with that subject. Mm-hmm. And so we, right from the beginning of the year, and we go through this every year with a new group, is we are not teachers. We are learning along with you. And through 4 years of the program and 13 or 14, I don't know how many years of mentoring, I learned something new every single year from mm-hmm. the group. And so we are actually part of the group. And I guess probably the best way is more facilitators than, quote, teachers.
Okay. Yeah.
Although they do look for us for answers sometimes, and we can go from what we have learned to share with them without saying, but this is what it means.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. I resonate with that challenge, because oftentimes when I'm leading a class or a Bible study, I have to resist the urge to just say what I think something means, because if I do that, then it can stymie somebody else developing a thought of their own.
That's kind of genetic, Adam.
Thank you. Was that a little dig at Dad right there?
I was thinking of your father, not me, of course.
But that also, as a trained godly play storyteller, they've actually used the word mentor now as well in some cases. We don't just give answers to things. The idea around wondering is that we're all wondering together, not trying to all come to the exact same conclusion about something, but trying to facilitate and instill a language system into the minds of children who are growing in their own faith.
And I took the godly play training when we were in New Jersey, and that has helped. And I did it specifically not to teach or be a facilitator for godly play, but I have found that training has also helped with my mentoring mm-hmm. for that same reason, is to let people wonder and take it from their experience and not try to just impose my experience on them.
So we're going to close up our conversation here in a minute. But before we do, I just want to give some time. If there's anybody who's watching that would like to put a question or a comment in the chat, you can do that, and we'll chat a little bit more, because it takes about 30 seconds to a minute for my mother and I, who are living in the future, for it to show up where you are. But please do, if you have any questions for my mother, Edna Thomas, or for me, or any comments you want to say, please do so. And then after we do that, we'll close up our live stream for today. It's been really great chatting with you, Mom.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I went on so long about mysteries, but you get me talking about books, and as you know, I can't stop.
There's definitely no reason to apologize for that. I asked you about what you're reading, and that's what you're reading. And I'm sure there are people out there who've never picked up a mystery who might do so now, and there you go. I know that you're an evangelist for Louise Penny, so I figured you would talk
I am, definitely.
about her.
Yeah. That
Um,
in children's books, and we didn't even get into
yeah, we
that, but
didn't.
that's
We
okay.
could have obviously talked all day about children's books.
Yes.
Um, so let me just do a quick bio then. We didn't say a bio at the beginning, but beyond being a voracious reader and a mentor for education for ministry, my mother spent many years as a manager of an independent bookstore during my formative years, actually. And so instilling a love of reading in my sister and me. Our bookcases at home always were several books deep. I remember you'd have like a row in the back and then a row in the front of the one, and it was just we had so many books. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
recently, my mom's been writing some reflections about books that were formative for her own childhood, but also for ours as well. Um, and I'm being asked to gather all of the names of the authors you just spoke of, and we will put them in our e-blast next week. So if you could
Oh,
just send me an email, Mom, about those, about just the
yeah,
names of the authors that you just talked about, that would be great. Um, uh,
I will do that.
yeah. And so having this wonderful experience as a manager of a bookstore, I worked for you for a couple of years, and I still have this wonderful memory of selling people the Chronicles of Narnia. And this is right after the Chronicles of Narnia had gotten their reordering.
Mm,
The publisher of the Chronicles of Narnia decided to put them in chronological order instead of the order that C.S. Lewis wrote them,
yeah,
and I had a
pretty
problem
hard.
with that personally. Like I had like you know, my blood started pumping about that one, and so whenever anybody bought a new set of the Chronicles of Narnia that were wrapped in, you know, whatever you wrap things in. Um,
So both that.
yeah, I would ask them if I could take the wrapping off and put the books in the old order, what I consider the correct order of the Chronicles. And most people would let me do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you read The Magician's Nephew before you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is a mystery, has no mystery in it because you know who they're talking about the whole time.
Right.
So that's why I always wanted to reorder those. But it was a wonderful experience working at the bookseller in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Really, again, another formative experience for my own life. And
But can I tell them one thing, one other thing about your work, two other things about your working there?
please, I have
Adam,
no idea
who
what she's going
was
to say.
excellent at math, and in those days, the ISBN numbers, which is the numbers that the publishers assign to books, and which in the databases, that's how they are listed. So at those days, they were 10 digits long. And Adam knew the ISBN numbers of the best sell of books that sold the best. And he could just go in and type in the ISBN number when somebody asked about a book to see where it was.
Certain books,
And
not
amazing.
a ton of books, but like the bestsellers I could do. Yeah.
Yeah. He also was fabulous at designing window displays. And one year at Christmas time, he did a window display
I know what you're gonna say.
and it had snowmen sitting around a campfire.
Yeah,
It was great.
it was stuffed snowmen sitting around a campfire. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Harry
Mm-hmm.
Potter. That was right around the years that Harry Potter was very was coming out and was so popular, and we had Harry Potter launch parties for
Mm-hmm.
books 4 and 5. I think were the ones that came out, or maybe 6 as well. When you were
Yeah.
the manager that. No, I do not have a photographic memory, Maggie. But I you type a number enough times, it sticks. And
Not for anybody
ISBNs used to
else.
be 10 digits, which are the same as phone numbers. So now they're 13, and there's no way I could remember a 13-digit number. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so it was great to work at my mother's bookstore. Wonderful experience, and of course, my own children now have a or love of reading They're almost 6 and they're both reading Up a Storm. It's amazing. Leah and I have basically stopped. We're no longer surprised when they just read words that we don't think they can read. It's pretty great. It's just amazing. And they love to read. We just got guinea pigs for them, and they spent an hour yesterday reading to their guinea pigs. So
Read to the guinea pigs, huh?
Yep.
Wait,
I
what were
think.
they?
Yeah, I don't remember what they were reading. I was out for a run, but I think we're gonna go ahead and finish the conversation there. Thank you to my guest Edna Thomas, my mother, for being with us and talking about books and education for ministry, and sharing a couple of reminiscences. And to all of you out there who are watching or watching this later, please stay safe, and God bless you. And I think that we're going to stop there. Let's just make sure nobody else has anything they're going to say. You want a last word, Mom?
Well, thank you for having me. And I know you all take good care of my son and my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren, so I appreciate that. And I look forward to when I can be up there again and see you all at the real coffee hour, and to get a hug from my son, who now I have to stand on the second step in his house in order to get a proper hug, because I'm shrinking and the children are all growing, and it's just it's not my favorite thing, but the hugs are. So,
Well, thank you so much, Mom, for being with us
it
today.
was fun. Okay, take care. Love you.
Love you too. And thank you all for watching. God bless. And we'll see you on Sunday for our live stream at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning for the 5th Sunday of Lent, I think it is. Oh, not Lent. Wow. It feels like Lent sometimes. The 5th Sunday of Easter this Sunday morning. And please be well.